4 kids, so in his spare time, he is a non-stop taxi driver. But Ken, tell us very briefly a little bit about channel mechanics.
Thanks very much, Rod, and looking forward to a great session. One of my favorite topics. So yeah, our company is a PRM player. We work with lots of vendors globally in terms of automating their channel programs. Incentives being a very large part of what we do, everything from rebates to spiffs to points, rewards programs, and so on. And yeah, looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Excellent. And our second panelist is Casey Epley. She's the Product Marketing Director, Incentives and Engagement at Maritz. She's got over 15 years in the incentives industry. She's had great experience in developing an innovative reward and incentive solutions, and her focus lies in helping clients foster long-term partner relationships and channel loyalty. Casey plays a key role in shaping Maritz's go-to-market strategy for incentives and engagement solutions. And in her position, she influences thought leadership initiatives and guides content strategy for the Maritz marketing team. As the resident SME for rewards, she's the go-to resource for both internal and external stakeholders. So Casey, tell us briefly about Maritz.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that. So Maritz is primarily a loyalty and incentives company. We do serve a number of different markets, but I'll probably just focus on our channel solutions for today. And so when I talk about our company, what I say is that we design and deliver really effective incentive programs. And so when I break it down, the design part of that has to do with our consulting arm, strategy, rule structure, design, and calculation, things like that, which also would incorporate like analytics and incentives optimization. And when we talk about design and deliver, the deliver part of that has to do with our point solution, our tech platform, incentive automation, reward fulfillment, all the way down to group incentive travel and anything that can engage a partner to take action through a communication piece or something like a gamification element to get them excited and participating. So for some clients, we do this design and deliver thing end to end, the whole shebang. And for some clients, we just fill in gaps here and there. So it could be any place. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And our third panelist is Sharon Maxfield, and she's the Senior Product Marketing Manager for 360 Insights. She has 16 years of experience focused exclusively on incentive program design and execution for technology, automotive, manufacturing, and consumer durable companies. She's created brand loyalty and advocacy via intentionally designed to-go marketing programs, and that inspires Sharon to continuously observe and absorb what's going on to make things even better. Sharon believes that purposefully cultivated experiences are the make or break factor for any business seeking to gain a customer for life. She loves to be talking about other issues, like the time there was a cheesecake in her hotel room or her favorite chocolate waiting on the pillow. Sharon, you're a girl after my own heart. You really are. And you can always get on Sharon's good side by suggesting a local coffee shop for a meetup or visit during her upcoming travels. So Sharon, tell us very briefly about 360.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here with all of my peers from other organizations. 360 Insights, we are an ecosystem orchestration organization. Really what that means is we help brands in their routes to market indirectly, looking at engage platforms that unite your experiences, excite the incentive solutions that offer the opportunity for you to have co-marketing, funds management, B2B rebates, incentives, rewards, and loyalty, all the way down to end consumer and customer promotion. Our Elevate side of the business is our driver for experiences in taking those professional services, be it channel marketing, creative services, B2B events, incentive travel, or our technology professional services. Lastly, we offer an ecosystem route to market, which means we're connected with other peers to deliver best-in-class partner-led solutions.
Super. And our final panelist is Mark Mundy. And I have to say before we start, Mark has been an award-winning speaker at Channel Focus. So there's a way to put a chap on alert just before a webinar. Mark's an industry veteran and bon vivant who spent the first decade of his technology career at Microsoft launching important cloud products, including Office 365 and Azure. He spent the entirety of his career in channels and business development with stints at VMware, Concur, SAP, Citrix, Cisco, and Sage. And he's been recognized on the CRM Channel Chiefs list numerous times and is a widely requested speaker on all things partnering, especially channel evolution and transformation. Mark is a co-founder of both Finhill Ventures and R2G2 and an emerging angel investor. He's based in Seattle, mad about cycling, hiking, and snowboarding, and has recently taken an interest in photography. So, Mark, welcome to you as well.
Hello. How are you doing, Rod?
Excellent.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited for the discussion.
It's going to be very cool. One of the questions that I get asked is we see incentives and rebates kind of in a silo. We need to do a lot more to make them part of what we're trying to do corporately and achieve as part of the corporate goal. And Mark, you're front and center on my screen at the moment. So I'll start with you on that question. How do we tie what we're doing in incentives and rebates to what the CRO is trying to do and what the C-suite is trying to do?
Yeah, exactly. I think what you want to do is you want to think about the value exchange for the value of that customer across the life cycle of that customer journey. So if you start all the way from awareness and enablement, all the way through to sales, cross-sell, upsell, retention, you have to have a value exchange across that journey. So in the past, we really focused on upfront margin, a little bit of MDF and some rebate. But now all along those stages, particularly in SaaS products, you need a partner to take action. And so part of feathering those investments is across that journey that the customer's on. And I think that's really where you want to look at it holistically. What's the total investment that you're driving with that partner to offset the cost of your own sales over the journey of that particular customer?
Excellent. And Sharon, what do your clients do to tie into what are the overall corporate goals? How are we linking that to what we're trying to do with rebates and incentives?
I think I'm seeing most commonly those silos being broken. Rod, you hit the nail on the head of a lot of organizations are siloed. And what 360 Insights has been seeing is our clients bringing their peers together. We're no longer seeing just sales coming to the table. We're seeing sales linking arms with their marketing peers to say, how do we best implement this? This is our joint objective. It's a new product launch. It's a growth initiative that they want. And we're starting to cultivate that partnered relationship internally so that it waterfalls externally into those channel relationships.
And Ken, if I can come to you, what are the changes you're seeing in the use of rebates and incentives? What are your clients asking for? What's different today to the way it was, say, 2 or 3 years ago?
Yeah, I think some are the same, and obviously some very different than it used to be 2 or 3 years ago. Rebates is still a critical part of most vendors' partner programs. I think, partners almost in some cases feel entitled to rebates, but it's a great way not to give additional upfront discount. You're only paying out on closed won business or bookings in the case of SaaS. Also using rebates not just for traditional revenue, but paying out rebates on things like, net new logos, winning in customer business, driving partner source demand, and so on. And then in other areas, using rebates to drive things like adoption. So in terms of, say, to add on services, driving up renewal rates. So being creative with your rebates, not just a traditional, I'm going to pay you for revenue or give you a kicker for revenue. I'm going to break that up, run multiple rebates, and make sure that the priorities of my business, that the rebates are aligning with the priority of my business, which might be net new logos, increased renewal rates in the case of SaaS, and adoption, and so on.
Excellent. And the same question to you, Casey. What changes are you seeing? What are the key directions you're seeing with your clients? What are they doing now that they weren't doing 3 years ago?
I totally agree with Ken on that part. What we're seeing is that there's a linkage now, or there's an attempt at a linkage between the behavior types and the incentive types. And so if you've got a group of transactional behaviors like the sales volume and those traditional, generic things that you're trying to drive, you might link that with a kind of more transactional incentive or rebate. But if there's those other behaviors that you're trying to drive, which have more to do with, customer satisfaction or some things post-sale, the incentives might be different. And certainly they wouldn't be calculated predicated exactly on the sales volume. So I think that that's really interesting. And the one other thing that I've been seeing is people less focused on that point in time of the actual sale and transaction. There's a lot more conversation about the pre-sale. So marketing is certainly involved in bringing those leads in and even getting really close to closing deals themselves. And then, of course, incentivizing those people appropriately. And then the post-sale team is involved in renewals and recurring revenue. And so those folks need to be incorporated too. So it's kind of like this broadening view of who are the players and how am I bringing them into the fold.
Excellent. Mark, coming back to you, incentives and rebates. When is an incentive and when is a rebate more effective? When do you use them? How do you use them?
I'll use my very scientific response I use on every webinar. It depends. But here's what I would say. You want to think about what are the short-term behaviors that you want to drive and the long-term behaviors that you want to drive. And to Ken's point, if it feels like it was an entitlement in the past, you've always given them this, they've always got it, it's part of their economic model. You need to shift that up and you need to work through that value exchange as I discussed. But the short-term things can be, quarter to quarter or maybe half to half. I prefer half to half for some of these incentives. So things like a promo or an offer or some specific action that really needs to drive a behavior in the moment. And then to what Casey was talking about and Sharon as well is the longer term ones, you really want to go tie to your upstream activities, demand gen, awareness, even forecasting can be really important in terms of making sure the behaviors are aligning to your objectives. So you really want to play with that. And then further downstream, when we get to things like attach, cross-sell, upsell, and importantly, renewal, those are really important elements because the channel generally does a really good job of that initial sale, that initial implementation, and they really take care of that customer. But in a SaaS model, they might sometimes forget to go back and engage with that customer and understand what they're doing from a utilization perspective. That's on the vendor too. You've got to give them the telemetry data, but then go in and say, hey, we've noticed you're doing these things. We recommend this as an upsell opportunity, or we recommend this at your renewal date. So you can feather those incentives in a number of different places. And I think the trick is don't let it get too stagnant. For the long-term ones, those might be year-long ones, maybe even a little bit longer. For the short-term ones, I'd keep those at a quarter or maybe a half.
And same question to you, Sharon. What are you seeing your clients do? Where are they using incentives? Where are they using rebates and why?
So I'm going to put some framework around what Mark was just talking about. And I'm going to say we're seeing big P program is that big long term, where little p promotion is something more strategic. So we are seeing some of those entitlements staying in that big P program. And what's happening in that area is they're binding not just the incentives and the incentive program, but binding it into their partner program and looking at how to profile those partners for where the products and solutions are that they carry, which geos are they representing, what route to market do they have, and then they're linking those entitlements to the maturity of the partner profile into the big picture program to allow them fair and equitable through the gamut, but not always giving everybody that expected entitlement. Then those little p promotions are allowing those carrot and stick behavior modifications to come into play, whether it's quarter to quarter, like Mark suggested. In some cases, we're seeing month of product launch or month before product launch to bind those as shorter term promotions for those very specific personas, be it marketing, technical, sales engineers. Even double clicking on what Mark was saying about that cross sell and upsell component in renewal, the amount of technical programs that are going in place to ensure that there is competency in the sales engineers or client success team on delivery so that they're able to do value attach at the time of renewal and getting very specific and will incentivize your learning in a little p promotion to play into the bigger P program.
Okay. And Ken, drilling down into that, specifically on rebates, what are you seeing as the trend? Is it front end? Is it back end? If there is movement, why is that and what's actually happening?
Yeah, I would say in terms of the rebates, Roddy, well, it's always a mixture of both, right, in the channel. So you start off with, your traditional upfront discount. But I think a lot of people are leveraging rebates, or a lot of our customers would leverage rebates to drive specific behavior and only pay out on them then. Because if you continue to do upfront discount, you literally run out of roadway, right? You can't do it and you're giving away margin all the time versus giving a rebate based on achieving either a certain revenue threshold, or as I said earlier, you know, it might be that you want to go into a new geo, you want to rebate a specific new product line you're launching. You want to add kickers to your rebates for taking certain certifications, and so on. The list goes on. If we take, you know, the vendors transitioning into the world of SaaS, they will be doing rebates based on adoption rates, renewal rates, and even associating customer success teams and building in levers in those areas. So I think, I suppose most companies, the best strategies I see, it's a mixture of both upfront discount and rebates, with the rebates being earned rather than given.
And Casey, in terms of incentives, a lot of that used to be given, okay, you've made the sale, off you go, here's some money. We all know exactly what it was for. What are you seeing in terms of the changes in the way incentives are being used with partners, and what sort of behaviors are they being really effective in driving?
Yeah, this is really interesting because we're seeing some movement towards incentives that are not as, let's say, tangible as the, percent rebate off or the discount. It could be something like earning access to exclusive products, or earning access to sit on a dealer advisory board, or some sort of thing that feels like a different type of motivator. So that's been one kind of interesting trend we're seeing with clients. The other thing, which I really like, I think we're all kind of hitting on some of the same topics, is it's best to have some very specific goals when you're designing your rebate and incentive program. So your incentives might pay out differently for things that are attached to your goals around premium products, for example. So if you've got a higher end solution or an advanced solution that you're hoping to kind of take over from your base products, your incentives could be structured in a way to incentivize the sale or the resale of those products. And maybe if you're introducing a new product line, you might be doing exclusive discounts to those specific partners for an early bird period. And so maybe just like for the first 3 to 6 months of a product introduction, that's whenever, if they can buy in early and they'll get a super special discount, for example. So those are some things I liked.
Okay. And Ken, coming to you, I have a lot of comments from people that partners are not as engaged as they used to be in these programs. How do we get partners engaged? What's the best way to get them fired up about what we're doing?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something we face all the time in terms of partner engagement. I think that's where you kind of transition from, what the rebate is to into execution mode, which that brings in the whole ease of doing business. So we spend a lot of time and effort with our customers, that when a partner logs onto the portal, you show them, be it their spiffs or their rebates we were chatting about there, is that they can see intuitively on one page, this is the rebate on offer, here's how you earn it, and here's what you earned year to date. So very much representing that in a visual nature, so it's consumable to the partner or the partner users that you're targeting. And then if we kind of drill that down into the individual incentives, again, showing the salesperson or the technical person behind the salesperson, here's the the strategy we have right now. We're incentivizing training, we're incentivizing deal registration, or whatever it might be, that they can clearly see what it is that's on offer from that vendor to them, but also make it very easy for them to go through that claim process. So I'd say the execution is, obviously you set up your goals, you decide what you're going to do, you make sure that you check that against your business strategy, that it aligns to your business goals, and then the execution is equally important. And I think that really does center on ease of doing business, because we always say partners have choices, they will work with multiple vendors, and the easier you make it for them to see, understand, and work with your program, ultimately that gives you the better chance of winning that partner mindshare and their in customer business.
And Sharon, what interesting ways have you seen your customers going out to the partners and getting them engaged in the program?
It's been a really interesting balance to watch. One of the topics lately has been, do you pay as earned based on the data that you have, and you want to make it really easy to get the payment to the partner? Or do you want to have them taking an action? And Kenneth nailed it a little bit in where he was talking about with that portal-based ease of doing business, where somebody needs to claim, you show them and you equip them for what they need to do in order to claim and show whatever evidence might be necessary. But where you have the master data, you as the supplier, you put that energy and effort into streamlining your data flows so that you're giving visibility and you're pushing out those communications. So not just build it for them to come, but how do you do a monthly statement newsletter that goes out that drives that engagement into the portal and say, here's where you're at in this month. How do you use that with your field managers to make sure your field sales managers are pushing the envelope to say, hey, your progress towards this goal is here. And if we do X in this quarter or in this month, we can get you bumped into a bonus or a kicker. So visibility is great, but doing those take it to 11 extras to drive that engagement, communication, communication, communication.
And Mark, you've been in the hot seat many times. Loads and loads of partners. Only a given percentage of them getting involved. What have you done to actually get those other guys involved and engaged in the program?
Well, I mean, I feel like the partners vote with their feet. And the reality is, if they're going to see value in it, they're going to invest in it. I wouldn't spend a ton of time chasing partners you can't figure out a way to spend the investment. Here's what I would say, though. Create a certain sense of urgency around the investment. How you do your accounting treatment for accruing the MDF is somewhat important. I would accrue it to the partner org rather than the partner, and then do the allocation. And then the second thing is, once you've allocated and maybe you've put it in the PRM and said, this is what your allocation is, it needs to be time bound. And they have to have a sense of urgency that that money needs is use it or lose it. And if they don't use it, then they lose it and you go apply it to somebody else. And make those rules very, very clear. And then depending upon the partner's maturity, some of them you want proposal based. They have a really strong marketing department. They do demand gen. They have a closed loop process. They have marketing automation. For them, it's like, give me a proposal based upon what you do. But for many, the ones that are struggling, go build a catalog of 4 or 5 very basic things. Your website is terrible. We will invest. You can invest your MDF to fix your terrible website. You don't have good, solid video produced content. We know that customers make buying decisions on video produced content. Go build video produced content. You don't have SDRs. Here's a way to go get outsourced SDRs and we'll connect the dots to you. Very, very, very specific. And then even back it up with approved vendors. So then they're like, oh, I have money to spend. These are actions that need to be driven based upon the insight from the vendor. And again, it's not the vendor telling them what to do, but it's like, these are the types of activities we're willing to invest in.
Excellent. And Casey, the other question I have from a lot of partners is, Company X developed this program. It's so complex. I'm just not going to participate. So how do we make it effective, but keep it really simple for the partners? Something Mark was touching on just now.
We had an example recently where there was an outside company who helped our client kind of design their rule structure. And then when we looked at it in terms of the application, it was going to be super complex. It was going to require the partners to do a ton of complex math that they don't even have access to. And so that calculation, like even if you've got multiple goals going on and you want, you know, a couple % from this product category and a couple % from this product category, if that's a goal of yours, that's great, but you can't design the actual incentive structures around something that partners cannot comprehend. And so to make it super easy, make sure you know how they sell, how they think, and that's one of the simple ways, I guess, to make it easy. Doing the calculations for them, of course, but making sure it's not complex.
Excellent. And Ken, coming to you, let's get real specific. If you look at the incentives and rebate programs, give us an example of something you've been involved in. And I know you've been involved in lots, but give us an example of something you've been involved in where, wow, that really worked. This is what it was trying to do. This is how we measured it. Let's really drill down.
Yeah, so say an example of something, you know, an incentive. Say we done something pretty recently, Rod, with a cybersecurity firm. I won't name their names, but they were trying to incentivize individuals at their partner ecosystem to do proof of concepts, right, for end customers. And if they'd done a proof of concept that ran for 3 months, they would incentivize them because their metrics show that if somebody took a proof of concept for 90 days, they generally had over a 90% closure rate. To do that, though, they had to spiff more than a single individual. It wasn't just the sales guy. They had to get to the technical team, the SE, and the people that set up those proof of concepts or demos behind the scenes. So they came up with an incentive literally to target 3 personas at an individual partner company. We executed on that with them, and we had the data out of their Salesforce system to understand, which companies, which end customers, who are the people at them, etc. And I think, targeting the right people to drive the goals that are in line with what your business needs are is really, really important, because traditionally most people just go after the salesperson who doesn't always have a say in which vendor they use behind the scenes. And one of the successful pieces around that was paying the partners, paying those individuals out in a timely manner. So we had that completely automated that, once they tick that box, they were paid within 24 hours. And ultimately what that does is it makes those people that you're targeting remember what they got rewarded for and do it in a very seamless and easy to do or touchless way for those individuals at the partner community. So I guess that's, probably just a recent example, Rod, that pops into my mind.
Excellent. And Sharon, I'm going to ask you that in just a moment. Just wondering first, before you come up with a really cool example, looking at Doug's question about claiming or not claiming. Should a partner have to claim, or should we be paying them automatically? What should we be doing?
Yeah, I love that question, just like I dropped in the chat. And I think the language we've all been using matters. And that's how Rod introduced me, is I think language matters. When we're talking about things paying at a business, most of us would agree, if you have the data, don't make the partners have to take an action other than completing their bank profile so they can receive that payment and they're getting those swift, smooth experiences. But where you either don't have the data and you need an action to supplement it, or you're paying a person at the business, be it that seller, that technical consultant, a marketing contributor, then you're looking for, how do I know who exactly that point of influence was? And you can do that by having them take an action. It may not be a robust claim. Maybe you do have some of the data and you're asking them to supplement. My favorite question that we see in action is, tell me the team responsible for this. It's so easy to say that this was the seller and give the seller credit. But when you say, hey, seller, who helped you? Tell me who you want to attribute. And then you can divide those rewards to those individuals, ad hoc, fixed, proportionate, or percentage. Then you start going, aha, there's my badass team. It's the combination of these 5 players that are moving the marker at this partner. And you can start engaging with those personalities.
Okay. And an example of something that's really worked. Sorry, Ken, come in.
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to come in on that point. It's, again, a really great question. And it is interesting. We generally do recommend that the vendor makes the partner claim, even if you do know it. And the reason behind that is kind of twofold. It's a touch point or engagement that you get them onto your portal because you might be doing something else you want them to see. And secondly is, when you do it that way, we've noticed it's in the region of 8 to 12% of rewards. It could be a rebate, it could be a spiff, etc., go unclaimed, which kind of tells you they done that because they were going to do it. They didn't understand the business. So just chiming in with a couple of data points to kind of share, we generally do recommend claiming for those reasons.
Excellent. And Sharon, specific example, something that you've seen one of your customers do recently where here's a great program, it outperformed the expectation. What was it? What did they do? How did they measure it? You're muted, Sharon.
Was double muted. I'm going to go to an MDF program because I don't think we've talked as much about those as we have rebate. And there's one client who really wanted to look at the adoption of those marketing activities to drive new product launches. And they took it to the level of that unique proposal that Mark was talking about, our marketing plan. They assigned a unique campaign ID to it. Then when you were doing your deal registration later, you were able to say, is this a deal sourced or that came from that particular marketing campaign and that initiative? They were binding all of those different aspects against it, whether it's a webinar like we're hosting today, or it is an email campaign and mailer where they're getting that lead scoring from. But they then were able to tie any of those marketing activities for those new products to the campaigns and look at where did those campaigns convert to deals that were won, and where were those win rates, and what was the success of their marketing dollars from an ROI perspective.
Fabulous. And Casey, same question to you, an example of something that you've seen one of your clients doing where it's just gone, wow, this has just been so successful. What was it? How did it perform? How did you measure that?
What I've seen successful is when the company really knows what's going to motivate the partner. And so there was an example where they knew that this group was particularly motivated by like additional training. They're kind of more on the technical side, if you will. And so they were really drawn to things like specialized certification or like special access to boot camps or AI security training, like some things that were really speaking to them as professionals to level up, if you will, in their professional growth. And so while they were doing a traditional kind of fixed bonus on products like rebates, they also were running kind of in the back end more like a leaderboard vibe, where some of the top, I think they took the top 10% of all of the partners, and they said, like, you were now invited to join our special access boot camp. And so they knew that would be really motivating for them because that particular partner base loves that kind of stuff.
Excellent. And Mark, an example from you. What
Yeah,
have you done
I'll go
where
old
you've
school. I
gone,
think
wow?
I'll go old school. I think I have the most vintage in this esteemed panel. Partners used to do this. Hey, we do a golf event every year. We know we get 2 or 3 customers out of that. Send us the money for the golf event. And I really believe in meeting the partner where they are. It's okay if you have a golf event in the middle of your campaign. What I would encourage them to do with MDF particularly is say, what are the elements of it? I've got some outbound demand I want to do, 2, 3, 4 mailers around the event. I want to collect data at the event. I want to have some SDRs calling back into those folks that attended that event over time, some webinars as well. An integrated campaign around an anchor activity, that's a great way to meet a partner where they are. I had one in particular where they did this golf event for 30 years, and every year they would get 2 or 3 wins out of it. With the integrated campaign, they went from 3 to 30 because they kept touching and kept touching. And to Sharon's point, they attached a campaign code to it. And they knew that somewhere in that journey, that person that was at the golf event, it actually turned into something. And then you could take that to the CRO and the CFO and say, we're not just hugs and chugs like we used to be in the old realm. This is how we build a business based upon an integrated marketing campaign.
Excellent. And I've got a great question coming in from Jane. She's basically just in advance of where I was going to be with the discussion, and I'm going to ask each of you individually the really hoary question. How do you pay? Do you pay the company or do you pay the individual? And what are the pluses and minuses of both? And if everyone could just spend just a couple of moments, what's the majority of what they're seeing? I'll ask Sharon, Casey, and Ken, and then I'll ask Mark to come in as a vendor and talk about his experience. So Sharon, the person or the company, and why?
Both. We're seeing both, and it's almost always both. And I think most of my peers will agree to that. It goes back to Mark's question in the very beginning about life cycle management, attribution management, and understanding not just your customer life cycle, but the life cycle of building that funnel and going through that flywheel of motions. And is it a carrot for individuals? Is it a reward for the business? What I see in Jane's question, though, that I do want to double click on is the fact that not all businesses will allow you to incentivize individuals at that business. And that's where we see choices that come in place. Is it because of partner preference, or is it because of regional rules and regulations? And how do you avail of where those choices and controls can be? Because if you do what Casey was talking about and saying, we'll do a leaderboard and we'll pour back into your people and we'll elevate them up, no business is going to say, no, you can't pour into my people. They might say you can't give cash to my people, but they're not going to say you can't incentivize my people with the right type of incentive.
Excellent. And Ken, what are you seeing? Is there a trend? Is it individual? Is it corporate? How are the incentives being paid? How are you seeing your clients doing it?
Yeah, pretty much along the lines of what Sharon said. It is definitely both, because you will have like Jane asked on the question there, how do you deal with it where a partner pushes back and say you can't pay my staff, basically. So I'll just give the example of a cash spiff. How we get around that, I suppose, or help our customers get around that, is we say we give the partners the opportunity to opt in. Vast majority do, by the way. But for the ones that don't, then we give them the opportunity to opt into what we call a company spiff, which is the exact same thing, except it's somebody at the company that then claims the cash. The employees can still see they earn the rewards. And then what those companies, partner companies, do is they draw down that funds, and it's up to them how they distribute them. And typically we see them kind of drawing those down at Thanksgiving and at Christmas. And that seems to appease all parties.
Excellent. And Ken, before I come to Casey, you're obviously based in Ireland. You do a lot of international business. I hear a lot of people saying you can't give individual incentives in XYZ country in Europe or elsewhere. How true is that?
Yeah, no, it's not true at all, Rod. I'm really glad you asked me that. It's just a myth. Honestly, it's a myth, and anybody, I hear it pretty much every day. Typically a US company going into Europe, well, you can't spiff those guys in Germany. Absolutely not true. You can spiff globally. We run for companies global spiffs, the same $50 or 500 or 5,000 in North America as Europe. You might want to tailor the amounts depending on the countries, obviously. But yeah, and in some cases the same rules apply. A partner won't let you incentivize their employees, but they will. I have never yet seen a case where they say, no, we won't take your money.
And without going into enormous detail, what about the tax implications there?
Yeah, generally speaking, the easiest way around that is do the terms and conditions of your program. When they opt in, they sign up for the T's and C's that they take care of their own tax.
Fabulous. And Casey, individual or corporate, and how do you deal with it?
I did a little informal napkin math earlier, and it seems almost a 50-50 split between companies who are doing either only the business entity, only the individual, or both. And so it's always, the answer is it depends, and it's both. But you might do things like the marketing funds and the discounts. Those are for partners. The spiffs are for the salespeople. But I also really love this challenge that if you can't actually pay the individuals, if you can't pay down to the employees, getting really creative with what we mean by incentives and rewards. And so you might venture into the land where it's more of a symbolic recognition or some kind of shout out. You might think about swag or something experiential or training. Like Sharon said, they're not going to, refuse that. It's not a cash equivalent. And so there might be some creative ways to think about making sure those people are acknowledged for their achievements and their contributions, but maybe it's not just a straight payout. You can get really fun with some of those kind of events or interesting incentive and reward definitions, if you will.
And someone touched on it on this earlier, and I think it's really important. Traditionally, we've been great. Here's the salesperson. Let's give them the rebate. Let's give them the incentive when we're talking to individuals as opposed to the company. As someone said, it's far more than just that individual. What about the engineers? What about pre-sales? What about all the other folks involved? Sharon, what are you seeing at 360 your clients are doing in terms of bringing these folk into the incentive and rebate programs and making them feel rewarded as well?
It's really fun to watch it in our organization and what's happening. I'd say that the tech industry is one of the early adopters of looking at it being more than just the seller and bringing in that who did the demo, who was that technical lead, especially in the world of certification, in the world of that technical experience. At 360, I think the number one area we're seeing an increased awareness of that is in the HVAC space, because they're looking at the full delivery model of all of those touch points. And since all of us are consumers in our lives, I challenge our friends in the technology space to think about those examples and what are all of those handoffs? What are all of those touch points? Who is leading up that BDR, SDR into the point of sale? Make sure that they're getting credit for meetings booked and conversations and doors that are being opened. The seller, yes, they've got that bag to carry, but then you've got the technical that's happening. What's happening when marketing is running nurture campaigns behind the scenes, helping with Mark's golf event, doing all of those components, needing to be able to recognize and reward those. And then going into that HVAC space example, they look at, did we get you enrolled in the service service preventative maintenance plan, seeing where you have that attached services side, proactively looking at, okay, and now we're going to come to your home every quarter to do the changes. So how can we in the tech space start taking it to that next level of who are those additional client success managers, delivery representations, and ongoing, whether it is, an implementation specialist, a managed professional service, etc.
Excellent. And Mark, if I can bring you into this, how do you make the submission for an MDF claim easy? The number of partners that complain bitterly about the fact, they told me they had MDF, and then I started to do the claims process, and it's an absolute nightmare. What are some of the golden rules? What are some of the pieces we need to put into the program to make it easy?
Yeah, I think this kind of goes back to a couple of the conversations. Is one, if the activities are clear and the requirements are clear, that's always better. If it's muddy, then you could say the submission is muddy. But if it's clear, we will pay you if you do outbound demand gen using marketing automation for a campaign that looks like this with a campaign code, and they've done it and it's tracked in your PRM, that's easy. If you don't have that level of clarity of the activities that you'll pay on, that's where this murkiness goes in. You can also use outsourced resources to do the validation as well. It really just depends. But what I would say is the clearer your process is, the easier you make it, then that payout will happen. But just to go back to the question a second ago about recognition across the life cycle, this also goes back to the PRM discussion, which is if the pre-sales engineer is really leading the engagement, make sure you're tracking that early in the life cycle in your PRM, because then you can go back and say, oh, that's the person who impacted that deal, or that SDR with that third follow-up after the golf event, that's in your PRM. This gives you the ability to go and say, I have the data. I know who the actors were. And then to Casey's point, recognition is often free or very inexpensive. The crazy things people will do for a t-shirt or a LinkedIn post or to maybe get invited to your club are as much as they might do for a big $5,000 incentive. And so don't be afraid to think of little recognition that actually pays 1,000,000 times more than the investment itself.
And Ken, submitting MDF claims, how do you make it easy? What are your clients doing to make it easy? Part one of the question. And part two, many partners are wanting to promote themselves, not the vendor. And that creates a really interesting issue for the vendor who's saying, you've got to promote my product, etc. What are your clients doing to overcome those issues?
Yeah, on the first question, the MDF, Mark covered a lot of it and covered it really well. But this is an area we've put a huge effort into over the last years to get the platform that it makes it as smooth as possible for a partner to both make their fund request and claim request. So we literally tie everything together end to end. And I always encourage our customers to put a lot of thought process into whatever activities that they're going to offer as part of their MDF programs, to really think through what are the proofs of performance that align to those activities, that it becomes a very seamless process. When they go to make the claim, the proofs of performance that are associated or tied to that activity are very easy, that it's almost automated auditing, if you like, so that the touch is very light. And then on the payment piece, a little bit like the spiffs earlier on, we fully automate all of those payments. We have a payments engine that literally just, if they claim $5,000, they get $5,000 pretty much instantaneously. Or indeed, if it's a credit, and on certain programs, people pay credit to distributors or whatever, they get issued their credit note, etc. And then on the second part of the question, Rod, around, trying to get the partners involved, everything from co-marketing, co-op type programs to JMF type programs that are very much akin to MDF. But even simple things like co-branding, sometimes these partners with a lot of consolidation can be bigger than the vendor they're working with themselves. So, the tail won't wag the dog, as they say. So giving the partner, again, this comes back to, your portal or your persona-driven experience on your PRM system. So when a partner logs on, giving them the ability to have their brand on there as well as the vendors, because that looks really good for them taking it to an end customer. So everything from co-branding on assets to your portal to your MDF campaigns, all of those things are really important to help those partners create awareness of both your brand and obviously their own brand in the market.
And Sharon, what are you seeing your customers doing on that?
So in terms of making claim submission or fund request easy for MDF, we're seeing Mark's earlier example of having those named vendors for providing the outsourced campaigns brought into the process. So Mark used the example of website optimization earlier. If the vendor knows there are 3 preferred providers that can offer this service, they're allowing the partner to do the fund request and delegate to say, yep, this is the activity I want to do, and I'm picking vendor A for it. At that point, the partner doesn't have to do anything. Vendor A gets notified. They take that burden all the way through what Ken just explained with proof of performance in going into those preferred areas. So making it easier to do business with because you're providing options. You also might see them doing a higher reimbursement rate when you're working with those preferred vendors, as opposed to, okay, partner, you really want to do this yourself, a lower reimbursement rate. That then ties into your second question, Rod, which is about partners who want to promote themselves. More and more lately, we're seeing what Kenneth talked about with that persona-driven entitlement for the program. And if you know that it is one of those larger partner organizations, giving them the grace to promote themselves because you know the solutions behind the scene are joint with your offering, and you're not putting that co-branded burden on. You're taking away from what we used to do. I mean, Mark, I'll age myself like you were mentioning earlier. I remember pulling out the ad sheet and measuring, okay, these 5 hardwares were featured in here and it was vendor A. Like, you're not seeing that anymore. Let the partner promote themselves.
Excellent. And Casey, a quick question for you, and then we're almost out of time. I'm going to ask for a quick roundup. But incentives, points. We're hearing more and more about points-based incentives. How do they work? How effective are they? How easy are they to implement?
Yeah, point solutions are super popular right now. They're really flexible and easy. And so what it can do is alleviate some of the burden that we've been talking about before on who is actually responsible for the sale. So if you have like an amount that you want to give to individuals, you might be able to issue this in points, and then it can be like distributed or disseminated down into the various pockets of the supporting staff. We like points a lot that have to do with driving different types of behavior. So you might have rebates and transactional type of behaviors linked up to those, getting the money back. But if you're really trying to drive incentives for completion of training or customer satisfaction scores, those feel like more relational, and we like the ability to the flex that points give. And points in general are an element of gamification, which we know we all like as human beings. We like to watch our point balance go up, and we like to get excited about what you can use your points for. And so if you've got a great online portal for that points redemption, the individuals can technically choose whatever is personally motivating to them. And so they often pick something that is maybe more experiential or something that's meaningful in their everyday lives. And you guys probably all have heard that idea of trophy value in the past. And so we kind of still adhere to that idea. So points programs are super easy to implement. There's a lot of behind the scenes calculations, but a really smart and flexible way to incentivize and reward your channel partners.
Excellent. Well, I'm going to ask the final question to each of you in turn. I'll start with you, Ken. If you look at all the things that your clients are doing, is there one program where you went, wow, this is truly different, and yes, it's been really successful? And if so, what was it?
Yeah, I don't know, Rod, is there one program? I think across the vendors, I would say the wow factor comes into the ones that kind of look at the whole ease of doing business, both for their partners, and a piece we didn't cover that I would like to just chime in with, Rod, is also helping their internal teams. That's where I think it's really important. So if we talk about, running a rebate or an incentive, having the ability through, again, a simple to use dashboard for your partner to understand exactly what it is you want them to do, where they are against those targets, and then having the reward process behind it. But equally doing the exact same thing for your account managers so that they can then they can see firsthand, partner needs to do another 5K. Well, then you get on the phone and you explain to the partner what they need to do to achieve it. So I think those kinds of things are really helpful, Rod, helping the internal team, because we all know those internal teams are really challenged. They've, always been reduced as a first place to go. So I think that's really important. And, rather than a particular program, I would say the vendors that are helping the account teams through ease of doing business are being very successful.
Excellent. And Sharon, the program, something you've seen where, wow, this has really made a difference. And what is it and how did it work?
There's a few that come to mind, and I'm not going to name them because we're getting ready to do some awards. And so I want those awards to share that celebration. But the theme that we're seeing is the companies know their business objectives clearly, and they're absolutely resilient at what it's going to take to hit that business objective. And they've unified across their different peer-to-peer groups so that we are looking holistically at what do we need to do to motivate businesses, people at businesses, all the way down to those end consumers where appropriate. And they're really coming with that full holistic strategy. And they're willing to say it's not just one lever we need to pull. Let's put all of our pieces in the customer lifecycle management together and look at this as a full strategy. They're not willing to risk failing. And so they're going all in to say, we know to make this happen, here's what we want to orchestrate.
Fabulous. Same question to you, Casey.
We've seen a couple of cool things in terms of hiring when it comes to filling out your leaders in, the channel professional space. People are pulling loyalty specialists from the consumer world into running channel programs. So they're kind of shifting this idea from it's, sales-based incentives to what are we actually trying to do? There's loyalty techniques that we can borrow and steal from our favorite consumer programs and use them. So I'm seeing some job jumping and some title switching, which we personally love, because I think when you consider the partner relationships that you have and, some of those loyalty outcomes and long terms, that's a really smart move. And related to that, one of the clients who's really successful right now has one loyalty program that they're running, which combines their customers and their channel partners. So Sharon was kind of alluding to that, but it's actually under one brand, one outward-facing name, and there's some nuances, of course, of who earns what and when, but the channel partners are playing in their space, and the consumers are also playing. So they're considering and running those programs in tandem, and it's doing really well for them.
Excellent. And Mark, final word for you. You've been sitting on the vendor side of the fence for many, many years. If you had some final guidance for the people on the call, rebates and incentives, what are the gotchas? What are the real things people need to be looking at?
Maybe it's three things I would say. For managed partners particularly, and maybe I could talk about unmanaged partners, but managed partners particularly, it starts with the shared business plan. And you'll hear me say this on every single webinar I ever do. It's a shared business plan, which means your goals and their goals come together to have a shared view. The data is clear, the objectives are clear, the timeline is clear, the horizon is clear. And then you run it like it's a machine. So you're meeting on it weekly, you're meeting on it monthly, and you dive deep in the QBR. If you don't do that, all these things fall apart. And I've been in too many QBRs where it's a sales QBR and you're forgetting about all the marketing. And then you're like, hey, I guess we should talk about the investment. Bringing that all together into a single plan, item one. Item two, get local early and often. The best initiatives I've ever seen are always have these attributes. It's a postcode and an SIC code. We want to go after this geo with this type of customer. That also gives your partner the ability to differentiate, because most vendors are horizontal. And then the vendor's not going to go down into a 6-digit SIC code in a specific postcode, but a partner will be able to do that. So really focus on that. And then I think the key is inspect what you expect. I know it's very trite, but too often the ideas are wonderful and the initiatives are terrific, and then you forget about them. You lose sight of it. And then you think, oh, that wasn't a good initiative. You didn't inspect it enough along the way. And that goes back to that MBR, QBR rigor of really inspecting the scorecard and your goals.
Fabulous. Sharon, Casey, Ken, Mark, some really terrific insights, some great questions from the audience. So thank you as well. There is a survey coming up at the end, so please complete that. It'll only take a couple of minutes, but it's really important we understand also how we've done. But once again, I'm sure I'm talking for everyone on the call. Sharon, Casey, Ken, and Mark, thank you very, very much indeed. Wonderful job, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, Rod.
Thanks, Rod.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.